Eosta is a company, specialist in organic fruits and vegetables. For 27 years, we've been selling organic fruits and vegetables to supermarkets and wholesalers, mainly in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. The company was set up by Volkert Engelsman, as I mentioned, 27 years ago, with the personal conviction that it should be possible to sell products, in this case fruits and vegetables, whereby you are also taking into account both the environment as well as the social component. Obviously we've been very lucky with the fact that the market since in the past 27 years has grown tremendously for organic fruits and vegetables. But it's not so much that Eosta was set up because the market was growing so fast and to sort of surf on that market. It was much more set up out of a conviction that world trade, that business can be done in a fairer and more environmentally friendly way. I think we need to, on the one hand, it's a vision about a world whereby our children and our grandchildren can enjoy just as much as we are enjoying the beauty of this planet now. So leaving a better planet behind, I think that's the bigger vision. But when it comes to sustainability, I think every sector or every company has their own personal look at the way that should have a definition. And the way we look at it is from a sustainable agricultural point of view. And to make that even more concrete, we've, together with many other pioneers in the organic movement, established a model, the sustainability flower, whereby we highlight 6 elements that we believe should be part of the sustainability discussion when we talk about sustainable agriculture and food. And those include climate, soil, water, biodiversity, health, and the social component, those 6. Yeah. I think for me the personal motivation to get involved in sustainability was the birth of my 2 daughters, which sort of gave me a feeling of responsibility. What kind of planet am I leaving behind? I think nobody can hide anymore behind the what they say in German, "Wir haben es nicht gewusst" syndrome. We all know that our planet is facing some very huge challenges, and I think that certainly here in the West, we should do our best to solve those. I think our responsibility, as a kid being born, you can be born anywhere in the world, but you're born in the rich European country. So I think, on the one hand you can dance around and be happy and glad that happened, but you also need to take responsibility from that position. So I think all Western companies, everyone living the good life here in Europe should have a certain amount of responsibility to help make that planet better for future generations, not just in our own countries, but all over the planet. I don't think you can expect from a poor Vietnamese family to work on a better world when they're worried about the next day or the day after. We are in the amazing position that we don't have to worry about that. And I think that gives us a lot of responsibility. And so from a positive perspective, I think we should take that responsibility. And I think from a negative perspective, it makes me very sad that there are so many people still walking around thinking that they don't have to take responsibility for what their effect is on the planet. And the good news, again, coming back, is that more and more people are realizing how important it is to step up action now and to do things. And we as a company want to show that business can play a huge role when it comes to making the planet a better place. It's not just the NGOs or individuals that do that, and that companies on the other spectrum are the bad guys. We want to show that companies can be the good guys also, and at the same time making money. So there's not a problem with those 2 things going together. So yeah, I think for us at least, and I can only speak from our perspective, we're speaking about circle of influence and circle of concern. And I think it's always very important when we have a discussion, also here internally. This morning I had again the same discussion. What is a circle of influence and what is a circle of concern? There's a lot of things that concern us, but we don't have too much influence over, and we then decide, let's just then focus on the stuff where we do have influence over. And I think that makes it, brings it down to much more concrete actions. We don't then have to think, this is going wrong, or the plastic soup, or stuff, the world is unfair, gender discrimination. Let's focus on what can we do, us, within our farm, within our network, within our influence sphere, to solve the issues that are being faced. And so we bring them down to more manageable levels and try and do our thing in that. And at the same time, we speak to governments to try and help convince them that the path towards sustainable agricultural policies is the right one to take, also for economic reasons. So that's also a role, and then it becomes a little bit further than just our influence. Then it comes, you reach the concern a little bit as well, because maybe we can change that also a little bit. So yeah, together with our other companies, our competitors, we don't really see them as competitors, but as colleagues, so to speak. We try and make the cake large. Instead of increasing our slice of the cake, we try and increase the cake. We try and increase demand for organic fresh fruits and vegetables, and then automatically everybody's piece grows. So you don't have to elbow away your competitor in order to be successful. You can do it together by creating a trust in the market, by controlling, by problematic suppliers, by looking at supply chains, by ensuring that the PR is done in the right fashion. And I think that it makes the organic sector very unique compared to the non-organic sector, whereby if somebody falls down on the side of the road, the others are very happy because they can pick up that piece of market business. And so that's, I think, the essence, the way we do it. When it comes to differentiating us with regard to others, we are constantly doing that. And we're doing that more out of a conviction, because we really want to make the world a better place, and are doing all kinds of campaigns to do that. And the effect is that companies, for example large supermarket chains, want to work with us, despite the fact that maybe our products are not the cheapest. And that's the way we can do both. We can still differentiate ourselves, and because we're doing it, we can earn a little bit more money so that we can afford those extra overheads that we need to run the campaigns and do the other stuff. So we are far more than just a trading company buying and selling. The fruits and vegetables are basically just a way of us getting our message across, so to speak. Yeah. The classic definitions of how the supply chain was organized is changing immensely. Whereas before you had a grower who would supply a trading company, and the trading would supply a wholesaler, and the wholesaler would supply a supermarket. There's all kinds of things going on thanks to the internet, thanks to the transparency that we have. And Eosta has always played a role within the whole supply chain. If we just sort of start at the beginning of the supply chain, we've been helping farmers switch to organic farming practices. We're very much involved in that. We're helping with them with packaging, with their whole warehousing systems, etc. We're working together very closely with transport companies in order to get, for example, the avocados from Kenya to here in Waddinxveen. But then we go further down the other side of the supply chain. We are helping many of our customers position organic fruits and vegetables and advise them how to put them on the shelves, and which products to use and which ones not to use. And we're talking about how to communicate with this very critical consumer, and what works and what doesn't work. So in that sense, the boundaries are coming down, and there's full transparency, and that is also, I think, an added value that we have compared to some of our colleagues. But if you look at the earnings model within the fruits and vegetables sphere, the most of the earnings are made right down at the other end of the supply chain with supermarkets. They're making the most money, and farmers are often earning the least and need to take the most risk, because wholesale companies will only buy the products that are sufficient for the market. And that's something that I think should be radically changed. We need to appreciate farmers much more. We need to make farming as attractive as possible so that future food supply systems are guaranteed. So this is something that we're looking at as well in when we work with farmers. So sometimes we talk about a set price, but then when it turns out that in the market we're earning much more money than we thought, and we make sure that extra also goes back to the farmers. It's not just that we say, well, contract is contract, good luck to you. So and we're really building this relationship with the farmers. And that's not just out of a moralistic or an idealistic point of view, it's also out of a business point of view, for the simple reason that there is more demand than supply of organic fruits and vegetables. So we need to really invest in the relationship with our farmers so they stay with us. So that's also an essential part of what we do. We have special audits for all our farmers, and we also look at elements like gender equality. But for us it goes far beyond a questionnaire and a tick in the box. This is the old-fashioned way of looking at companies. The tick in the box and the questionnaire is done by companies to avoid problems later on down the line, so they can say, well, we've got everything done, it's not our fault. And I think that's a very old-fashioned way of looking at this issue. Not just doing it to cover your own ass. We believe you should do it because gender equality should be enhanced. So the main thing we do is we help. On the one hand, we put it on the agenda with many of our growers and monitor what's going on. And on the other hand, we see that many of our growers are already taking huge steps when it comes to gender equality, and we stimulate those actions that are already being taken. What we've learned is that it's very difficult and not very sustainable for us as a Western Dutch company to say, you should do this. They'll do it just because we're telling them and they want to do business with us, but that's not the reason why you should do it. You should do it because you feel from the heart that it's the right thing to do. So all our social projects, whether it's gender or health or schooling for children or etc., are for the most part projects that are already occurring even before we got involved as a company. Just coming back to the gender issue, I'm heading off to Peru in a few weeks' time to visit some amazing projects where our organic ginger farmers in the selvas, in the tropical rainforests of Peru, are supporting women, and women are being extremely, it's a horrible situation, molestation, sexual abuse, physical abuse, even their children being in a very unsafe environment. And two of our growers are really taking steps to help those women, not just by employing them, which could also be seen, it's a two-way thing, it's a win-win, but they're doing it also, they are arranging special workshops for women to be able to fight against this type of abuse, to learn how to talk to their husbands and their partners about this kind of issue. These growers are creating safe zones for the children to come to before and after school, so they can play or do their homework, so the women don't have to worry about a child being left alone at the house. So on all kinds of levels, these farmers are taking steps to handle this abuse and to create more equality, also within the whole community, because when the women have finances and money, that gives them more status. And okay, there's still a long way to go, but it certainly helps. And we are supporting those types of projects. So that's a very practical way we try and do that, next to the fact that we have them obviously in our way that we audit our companies. Yeah. The United Nations have established these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and human rights gender equality plays a role. There's many other things. I think this type of development is a positive one, because it gives you the United Nations where we all can look towards and say, okay, this is important, and let's make it concrete from those goals. How can we as a company do things? So this is the human rights in the broadest sense. On the other hand, coming back to the cultural aspect, actually I wrote a blog about this last year, about exactly this element. Often we say, don't give them fish, give them a fishing rod, that kind of old-fashioned cliche ways. And I wrote a blog about that. I'm saying, no, don't give them a fishing rod. Go to the place where you are, learn more about the problems that they have with perhaps the fish, find out how we, as our knowledge and our technology, can just help them develop a solution. So how they can make their own fishing rods or any other form of fishing equipment from local sustainably used equipment or products that can be found there. So when something breaks down, they can make it and repair it, etc., etc. So look far more at supporting these communities with knowledge than with this idea that we are somehow know it better than they are. So use the knowledge, share that with their local knowledge, and then come up with a far more sustainable solution to the problems. And I think that way, look at also at human rights in a different way. We say here in the West about no child labor, but we work with 3,000 mango farmers in Burkina Faso, and some of these farmers have 2 trees, and at a certain stage the mangoes are ripe and need to be picked. So also the whole family helps picking those mangoes. And we have absolutely no problem that also the children help pick the mangoes, as long as it doesn't interfere, for example, with their schooling activities. So again, I think we need to be very pragmatic with our approach, and certainly not look at it in the way that we here in the West know it better and thou shalt do this, that, or the other. So, but I do think that we have a little bit more knowledge when it comes to technology and technological developments and some other stuff that's happening in other parts of the world. So I think we should be sharing that knowledge and making it more available. And then at the end of the day, let them decide how to go about that. Yeah. This company was formed on 3 basic principles, and that was healthy, organic, fair. So the fair element is an extremely important one. We've seen fair trade as a brand, the fair trade brand, both in the States as well as here in Europe. And many of our growers used to be fair trade certified. However, although the principle that farmers should earn an honest price and be able to also let the community benefit from that higher income, that stays upstanding. The actual system, I'm not going to bore you with the whole way that was all worked out, is a bit archaic, more 70s, 80s style, and doesn't fit the fluctuations of price. We believe that you shouldn't just have a standard price, but if the market is higher, that also the farm should profit from those principles. So, because there's not a better alternative, we've sort of set up our own system, which is called the 1 cent for the future, which is a very simple system that for every kilo of fruit or vegetables that we sell from a certain farmer, 1 cent is taken out of our own overhead, put in a fund, and that money is paid out to the farmer at the end of the year. With very much where we support projects that are directly linked to the farmer themselves. So, for example, we were just talking about the women being abuse program in Peru. We're supporting that with the 1 cent for the future project, so that when, for example, a large supermarket chain buys ginger from this particular grower, there will be money going directly towards these women. And that creates, and this is, I think, the key to sustainability, the win-win-win-win-win-win-win, because everybody needs to win for something to be sustainable. So in this case, the women win because they get more attention, more facilities to be able to fight this terrible abuse. The grower, the farmer, wins because he's a very popular employer and offers this to his employees. He has loyal, motivated employees and probably will get a bit more income for his ginger because he's adding value to his ginger. We win as a company because we're not just selling organic ginger from Peru, but we're also selling organic social ginger from Peru. So that gives us a differentiate in the market. Our supermarket, the Aldi, the Lidl, Edeka, whatever, they win because when people buy organic ginger at their stores, they expect it also to be social. There's nothing in the law about organic saying it has to be social, but this is what the consumer expects. So they win as well because they score on the look at me how sustainable a supermarket I am, because they're not just offering organic ginger, but they're also offering sustainable ginger. Why? Because we're offering these little flyers that we put under the ginger where we talk about the project and we say how they are being supported. And the consumer at the end of the day wins as well because he's getting a bit of a good feeling about the fact that his ginger is making a difference for the lives of these women on the other side of the world. So it's... And I think that is the key to these more very transparent projects whereby your purchase as a consumer is having a real direct influence. It's not just a vague kind of story, it goes into some kind of cloud and at the end of the day a farmer is helped out. It's very, very concrete. This is the farmer. All our farmers have their own Nature&More stamp. These are the women that are profiting from the fact that you, consumer, are buying the ginger. And that, I think, is the new way of looking at fair trade. As a project, I mean, obviously, that's on top of the fact that we need to pay a livable income, etc., etc. But that's for us is a clear thing already. The problem that we have now is that we first need to have a disaster before governments take action on making supply chains fairer. At the end of the day, I think we need to go towards a system where if you don't have a fair price, or the environment is, or the social aspect is negatively affected, then you should pay taxes or have to compensate for that. And that is the future, and that comes to what we're doing now is with together, for example, companies like Ernst & Young, Triodos Bank, whereby we're looking at the true cost of food. It's very clear, we're looking at what are the hidden costs in farming, and we're making them very visible. And that way we can compare, for example, organic products with non-organic products. Just to give you an example, the French government now needs to spend 520 billion euros to clean their water supply of pesticides and artificial fertilizers. 520 billion euros. But that costs of that cleaning up that water supply is not found in the conventional products of France when you go to the market and you buy them. Somebody else has to pay that. And we're now moving to a system, and we see, because all the accounting companies are involved, all the banks are looking at this, are saying this is going to be the future. So we're no longer analyzing companies for their profit and loss, but we're looking at their social and their environmental impact. So this will clear this itself up. Governments already, for example, in Sweden, are taxing, have placed a higher tax on artificial fertilizers because of the damage it has on climate. In Holland, the government will look very differently at investing in agriculture that is going to be polluting the water supply, because at the end of the day, they have to clean that water and pay for it. So it takes it away out of this whole, if you're left, Greenpeace kind of supporter or right wing, you love your car. It takes it completely away out of those zones. It just makes it financial. If you make costs, you have to pay for it at the end of the day. Just like you and me have to pay for the things if we mess up in our street or something like that. So I think this will be the biggest driver for sustainability, and will be a very positive development. And because Eosta is very far with this development, we've been asked to do a pilot from the World Business Council of Sustainable Development with all the large multinationals, just to see how this works in the practical side. And recently we just released a report which we presented to Prince Charles, with all the results in there. And it's still very much pioneers' work. We're very at the start of this thing, but we're already showing a profit and loss balance sheet with our environmental and our social impact. And on top of that, we are communicating specifically about products from certain growers with their impact. I don't know, we'll give you that, but you can zoom in later on. When it comes to organic, for example, apples from Argentina, for health, for climate, for soil and for water, and comparing it directly to the non-organic alternative. And so we can really say very strongly, organic is not too expensive, what often people think, but conventional is too cheap, because so many costs are not involved in the end price of that conventional product. And that is changing so rapidly that all these elements regarding fair trade, biodiversity loss, climate change, water pollution, they're all going to be tackled in the future. So that's a positive, yeah. Today we learned that another agency in the States are not allowed to use the word climate change. They have to use extreme weather instead of climate change. So, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think generally speaking, people now realize that climate change is real and here to stay. And also there, I think, we have the circle of influence and the circle of concern, but we have influence on governments, because we all know, and this was something that was discussed in Paris for the Paris Accord, what was it, 1.5 years ago, is the role that a healthy soils can play to fight. Well, you're into permaculture, so you know all about the importance of a good, healthy soil, but the soil is able to sequester, to hold carbon. And that is, it can be a huge carbon sink if we treat the soil properly. And when you look at the United Nations and they show you which forms of agriculture are sustainable. There are the 5 forms, permaculture being one of them, organic being another one. It's all based upon the fact that we're talking about healthy soils, so that healthy soils can hold the carbon, and that's why it's so essential to invest in more sustainable farming techniques, that we're not killing the soil with lots of artificial fertilizers and pesticides, but that we are protecting the soil and using it to its fullest level. On top of that, this healthy soil is good to handle the results of climate change. So extreme amounts of rain, the drainage in a healthy soil is fantastic because it's full of worms, so that the soil drains well. And when there are long periods of drought, the soil holds the water like a sponge. So again, it's so logical to focus on sustainable farming techniques and to step away from the this idea that we need to produce huge amounts in a very short period of time, neglecting what's happening in the long term. And I'm hopeful that will succeed more and more in the future, and that sustainable farming practices are not just seen as a way of producing organic food for a few rich people here in the West, but are seen as a way of saving our whole agricultural systems and our food systems in the future. We need to firstly accept the fact that organic farming is the way we've been farming as humanity since we started farming. And so much more farming in harmony with nature. So on the one hand, I do like technical developments whereby we can use drones to analyze soil and use microcomputers to look at all kinds of elements in the water, etc., etc. But I think we should never think that technology will surpass nature, and I think this working in harmony with nature is the most essential thing when it comes to the future of sustainable farming, but also the future of humanity. A good example is the way here in Holland we go about water. Holland is known as a country that's always been fighting water, keeping the water out, but our whole attitude towards water has changed in the last 20, 30 years time. Well, let's say 20 years time even. We've, instead of building higher dikes and pushing away the water, we're giving room to the water. We're giving much more, we're sort of beginning and then we're saying, okay, go do your natural thing. Since we're doing that, we have much less problems with extreme water conditions. Even the weather has been much more extreme in the last 20 years compared to the time before that. And I use this often as an example as the way that we should look at agriculture as well. The whole natural ecosystem, the way we have it, the balance between predators and disease, and if you can keep that natural balance, you're going to keep your problems down. You're going to be able to produce good, strong, healthy, vital food without too much problems. When you take away certain elements, it can go well for a certain period of time, but at one stage it's going to go wrong. There's no natural predators. You're going to have a disease that's going to take over. You're going to have soil that's going to die because there's too much chemicals or pesticides going in there. So far more looking at harmony, using technology where it's available, but not letting technology ever replace that basic principle, I think is the key for organic. I think the Save Our Soils campaign we're very proud about, as both myself but as a company as well, because it was the first time that the FAO started working with business, and my personal role in that was to get organizations on board of this campaign. And we have now more than 300 organizations that joined the campaign, including Greenpeace and WWF and Oxfam Novib and HIVOS. So large NGOs, and I think that would lead to the second one. I like the fact that we are succeeding in working with NGOs. If we can convince NGOs that business is okay, we're not the enemy, and certainly in Holland I think we have a much more pragmatic approach between business and NGOs and being able to work together. In other countries, we see that they are fighting each other and complaining about each other, and we're showing in Holland that collaboration is possible, and that I think is a very positive example for other countries in the world, is that the only way we're going to achieve more sustainability is these organizations start working together. So I'm very proud that we've run campaigns with Greenpeace and with, for example, the Oxfam Novib and those types of companies. And we're now also again in contact with Oxfam Novib to talk about the livable wage thing. with HEVOS as well, and again the project that we have in Peru with the women, which we're trying to help. I'm proud that we can play a role in that. So I think that's a good thing, because it reaches me personally. It's not just something that I'm doing for the company. I really feel that. Well, the reason why I ever joined this company was to in some way or other make the world a little bit of a better place, and I feel that through these very concrete projects, we're actually succeeding with that. So yeah.
My teachers fascinate into sustainability lexicon and vocabulary.
Okay.
Are there any words that you have developed inside the culture of Eosta?
Wow, that's something I've.
I reckon maybe I can give you a little hint.
Yeah.
You can repeat a piece of the question again, but because I heard Volker say that we're soldiers.
Of course, yeah. Well, that was a great fun. Yeah, we ran a campaign together with the FAO, the Save Our Soils campaign, and that's the word soil is ideal for this. So we have soilebrities like Julia Roberts. She was one of our soilebrities, including Desmond Tutu, Prince Charles, His Holiness the Dalai Lama worked with us on the campaign. So soilebrities, we obviously it's the soil mates or the soilgers. These are the people fighting for us for the campaign. We spoke about, and we still are speaking about, that sustainable farming is the soilution. There you go, you get it. We even had a South African rap artist who wrote some soil music for us. So yeah, the word soil is a very good one for us to use. But we're now running the campaign True Cost of Food, but there's not too many lexicon kind of words on that. I'm just trying to think of other stuff that we've used, but it's more the other stuff that we're using is more in the sense that it's a marketing terms to get attention. So we celebrate the new avocado season, and we get from Mexico, and our Mexican grower has a big mustache. So we were handing out with our avocados these stick-on mustaches, and a mustache in Dutch is called een snor. So we asked everyone to make a snorfie with them with the stick-on mustache. So, but those kind of things. But that's not hardly. I don't think your press professor will be too interested in those types of examples. But we'll stick to the soil ones.
Great. Fantastic. So back to your children.
Yeah.
What will you tell them and your grandchildren about your adventures at Eosta?
Well, I tell them a lot. They regularly come and visit Eosta, so they know the company well, and so they're big fighters for the organic movement and for the bees and the worms and etc. etc. So, no, I think they're fully aware of the world they're in and the challenges that are coming up, but at the same time they're still enjoying life thoroughly without letting these worries, get them away from their enjoyment. And I hope later on, when they, things unfortunately, when they get better, it will take some time for them to get better. So they're going to perhaps see, the world not in the way that I would like them to see it, but this is where unfortunately we're heading first. I hope that they'll always realize that at least their dad was working hard to change that, to turn the tide and to fight against that. There are some people I meet, they say it doesn't make any sense, it's all going to go down the tube anyway, and I think that's a very negative approach, and I completely not agree. But even if that was the case, then I would love to be seen as fighting against that, even if it was the last man standing, so to speak. So, but that's, as I said, not the case. I think now we need to do everything in our power, for the simple reason that we know there's a problem, and I think I'd like to turn it around and to tell everybody who's not doing something in the regard of making the world a better place that they should start doing that. Come on, guys, we need everybody, yeah, it's no longer an option just to sit this one out. You need to be. My father always says, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I think this counts for the world where we are now more than any ever. Yeah. I just think when you find purpose in your job or in your work and in what you do, then it gives you so much more energy. So instead of work costing you energy and you come home and you drop on your settee you come home thinking, yes, another great day. And I would wish that everybody gets the chance to find a job, to do something in their life that gives them purpose, and to do something for your fellow human being, or to help make the environment cleaner, to the oceans less polluted, and the air cleaner, and you know, to fight climate change. These are all things that gives you a lot of purpose. So I hope, and I know that companies are looking for people like that, and those the people are the most valuable employees to have. People who are not in it just because they want to pay off their rent or their mortgage, but people are doing it because they really believe that their organization is making the world better. And that's going to stimulate more and more companies to really take this subject seriously, far more seriously than they're doing now. So in that sense, again, I call upon people to take responsibility, and if you do, you'll enjoy life even more than you did before. So yeah, I think that was the way to round it off.